rookie quickly became a locker room phenomenon. Veteran players weren't just praising Shedeur Sanders in press conferences. They were gravitating toward him. The backup QBs weren't just competing. They were watching him to learn. And that's because Sanders wasn't doing the things rookie quarterbacks usually do. He wasn't hesitating. He wasn't holding the ball too long. He wasn't staring down his receivers or floating checkdowns. What he was doing was throwing with anticipation, reading the blitz, adjusting protections, and calling audibles with the confidence of someone who had already seen it all.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
On the practice field, even the defense was starting to respect him. And for a Browns defense headlined by Myles Garrett, that meant something. Garrett was candid. It's rare. Most young guys, they break under pressure. He doesn't. He absorbs it. That's the difference. During one practice, Garrett came off the edge untouched, expecting to rattle Sanders on a designed rollout. Instead, Sanders saw him mid-drop, slid 2 steps up, and released a 35-yard pass on the move before Garrett even got within 5 yards. The sideline erupted. Defensive players whistled. The coaches nodded. The throw was perfect. The poise was chilling. And yet, the most impressive part wasn't the throw. It was the way Shedeur walked back to the huddle like nothing had happened. Inside the Browns organization, the conversation shifted. Offensive coordinator Joe Woods was already restructuring packages to play to Sanders' strengths. More shotgun, more RPOs, more freedom at the line of scrimmage. Plays were being installed with Shedeur in mind. Not just plays to manage the game, plays to win it. A scout within the building put it plainly. He's not just ahead of schedule, he's redrawing it. Reporters covering camp couldn't get enough. Every day, clips of Sanders were going viral, tight window slants, no-look passes, pump fake bombs down the sideline. One clip even showed him joking with cornerback Denzel Ward mid-play, then dropping a dime over his shoulder while laughing. That level of confidence, mixed with elite execution, had only one comparison: Mahomes. But what made Sanders truly stand out wasn't just skill. It was preparation. He was the first in the building and often the last to leave. Equipment staff began noticing that his locker light was on before theirs. Practice squad receivers shared that he was texting them late at night, asking to run red zone fades after walkthroughs. He didn't treat the NFL like a dream. He treated it like a business. And then came the scrimmage. Browns versus Browns. Full pads. Fans in the stands. Coaches evaluating every rep like it was a regular season game. This was where the starter was supposed to emerge. Shedeur didn't just emerge, he exploded. First drive, 8 plays, 72 yards, touchdown. Second drive, 5 plays, 61 yards, touchdown. By the time the first quarter of the scrimmage ended, Sanders was 10-for, 11 with 2 touchdowns, and had rushed for 24 yards on designed QB keepers. The defense wasn't soft. It was top 10 in the league. And yet, it was like he saw the whole field in slow motion. When asked afterward what had changed, Sanders said, "Nothing. I just love to prepare. I don't look at it as pressure, I look at it as privilege." That statement reverberated through the franchise. The Browns weren't just excited about Shedeur, they were beginning to plan around him. Team President D. Haslam reportedly started informal talks with the PR team about marketing campaigns centered on their rookie quarterback. Not because of hype, but because of resonance. Fans were buying number 5 jerseys faster than any Browns jersey in a decade. Sanders wasn't just performing, he was connecting. In the locker room, his presence was magnetic. One player compared him to a 22-year-old CEO. His command, his calmness, and his clarity in communication gave the offense a confidence it hadn't had in years. Even head coach Kevin Stefanski, usually reserved in praise, was gushing. "He's special," Stefanski told reporters. "He's doing things you can't teach. But more than that, he's humble, he's focused, and he elevates everyone around him." And that elevation was beginning to shape decisions. By the start of week 3 in training camp, Shedeur Sanders had been moved to 100% of the first-team reps, Kenny Pickett, brought in as insurance, was informed by staff that the competition was shifting. Dillon Gabriel, the other rookie, was moved to developmental work. Joe Flacco, the veteran, was taking reps behind Shedeur, not in front. The message was clear. The QB1 spot belonged to Sanders now. And it wasn't temporary. It was transformational. Sports shows across the country had a new headline. Did every NFL team just miss on Shedeur Sanders? Some analysts pointed to his fifth-round draft spot as proof the NFL still doesn't understand how to evaluate character combined with preparation. Others believed it was his confident demeanor, the Dion factor, that caused teams to shy away. But those critiques now looked absurd. In camp, Shedeur wasn't cocky. He wasn't arrogant. He was clinical. His teammates backed him. Loudly. Jerry Jeudy told ESPN, "I've played with great QBs. Shedeur got it. He ain't fazed by nothing. I trust him." Even the defense began playing more physically just to test him. And every time they did, he responded. Not with trash talk, but with execution. By the time the preseason opener arrived, Sanders had not only earned the start, he owned it. On national television, with fans and scouts watching closely, he put on a masterclass. 11 of 13 for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns in 1 quarter of action. No turnovers. No missed reads. He even drew a penalty on a hard count that caused the defense to jump. The announcers couldn't stop talking about him. Poised, polished, and fearless, one said. You'd think he's been in the league 5 years. The headlines the next morning said it all. Shedeur Sanders, the Browns' best draft pick in a generation. Rookie QB silences critics with clinical preseason opener. From 5th round to franchise face. The Browns suddenly had more than a quarterback. They had a vision. Fans believed. The locker room believed. And Shedeur? He stayed locked in. In interviews, he deflected praise, giving credit to his O-line, his coaches, and his receivers. When asked about the hype, he simply said, "It's camp. It's a start. But I'm chasing something bigger. Consistency. Wins. Legacy." Legacy. That word hadn't been used around a Browns quarterback in a long, long time. But now, with Sanders under center, it no longer sounded like fantasy. It sounded like a plan. By the second preseason game, the expectations were no longer about can he handle it. They had shifted to how much more can he do? The stadium was packed, not with just Browns fans, but with curious onlookers from across the league. National outlets sent crews. Analysts who had written off Sanders during the draft process were suddenly on camera, trying to recalibrate their stance. "I didn't think he'd look this ready," one former quarterback admitted on a live broadcast. But this isn't potential anymore. This is performance. On the field, Sanders didn't flinch under the added attention. In fact, he looked even more comfortable. The second game was against a stout defensive unit. It was supposed to test his decision-making under duress. Instead, he dismantled them. In 3 drives, he completed 12 of 15 passes for 168 yards and a rushing touchdown. He didn't just manage the game, he dictated it. There was one particular drive that changed everything. Backed up on his own 3-yard line after a muff punt, Shedeur stared down the opposing defensive coordinator, who had just called the zero blitz. No safety help. Every gap coming. Most rookie quarterbacks panic in that situation. Shedeur, he changed the protection, barked a signal, and hit a seam route up the middle for 38 yards. Then, he nodded toward the sideline. Cool. Efficient. Dangerous. After the game, the Browns coaching staff finally confirmed what everyone already knew. Shedeur Sanders would enter week 1 of the regular season as the starting quarterback. And the moment that announcement hit the airwaves, Cleveland changed. Local businesses started offering discounts for anyone wearing a Sanders jersey. Murals popped up downtown with slogans like "Believe in 5." Even longtime skeptics, battered by years of quarterback failure, began to feel something they hadn't in decades: hope. But the reaction outside of Cleveland was even more revealing. Other teams, especially those that passed on Sanders, were reportedly stunned by how quickly he had seized the spotlight. Scouts began whispering about how their own front offices had missed it. GMs quietly reviewed their pre-draft notes, wondering why the tape hadn't been enough to push him higher. Internally, the Browns had always believed he had something special, but even they hadn't expected this. Week 1 was against Pittsburgh, a division rival, on primetime. The media narrative framed it as a baptism by fire. A rookie quarterback going into a hostile environment, facing one of the league's most respected defenses. The Steelers brought pressure early and often. They tried to rattle him, and for a moment, it seemed like they might. Shedeur's first 2 drives stalled. He was sacked once, narrowly avoided an interception, and missed a timing throw on an out route. But then, something clicked. On the 3rd drive, he came out in tempo, no huddle, calling plays at the line. Suddenly, the defense was on its heels. He hit Jerry Jeudy on a deep cross for 26 yards. Then he ran a bootleg to the left and flicked a sidearm dart for another 15. The drive ended with a back shoulder fade to the corner of the end zone. Touchdown. He jogged off the field, nodded once, and sat on the bench like he'd done it 100 times. By the end of the night, Sanders had thrown for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. He had also rushed for 46 yards on broken plays, extending drives and showing the kind of pocket awareness that's rare for any rookie, let alone a 5th-rounder. Social media exploded. "This is the guy you passed on," one analyst tweeted, tagging several NFL teams. Even retired quarterbacks began chiming in. One Hall of Famer said, "The game looks slow for him. That's the sign." And that was the beginning of what fans would later call the Sanders effect. In the weeks that followed, stadium attendance rose across the league whenever the Browns came to town. Opposing teams began tailoring game plans specifically for him, not just to stop him on the field, but to limit his ability to control the tempo of the game. But nothing seemed to work. Week 2, 3 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 0 sacks. Week 3, 312 passing yards, comeback victory in the final 90 seconds. Week 4, 4 touchdown passes, a perfect passer rating in the second half. At this point, it wasn't just hype. Shedeur Sanders was leading the league in completion percentage and QB efficiency rating. NFL Films began tracking his field reads. He was processing faster than nearly every starter in the league. And still, his demeanor remained unchanged. When reporters asked him about his success, he downplayed it. "I'm grateful, but there's more to do," he said after a 4th straight win. Privately, coaches shared stories about how he was correcting receivers' alignments before the snap, how he was watching tape late into the night and texting route adjustments to his teammates. He wasn't just executing the offense, he was evolving it. But perhaps the most impressive part of his rise wasn't the numbers, it was the leadership. Midway through the season, the team hit a rough patch. 2 starting linemen were injured. The Browns dropped 2 straight games, both by less than a touchdown. Critics wondered if the magic was over, if the rookie walls had arrived. Inside the locker room, Shedeur took control. He called a player-only meeting. No coaches, no media, just teammates. One veteran later shared. He didn't yell. He didn't point fingers. He just said, "This is on me, and I promise it'll change." The next game, he delivered one of his best performances of the year. 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a game-winning drive with under 2 minutes left. The locker room went wild. Coaches stood in awe. Players embraced him like he had just won a Super Bowl. The Browns were no longer a team searching for a quarterback. They were a team being led by one. And around the league, teams began to realize what had happened. While franchises spent tens of millions on free agents, while others gambled on raw tools in the first round, the Cleveland Browns had found a franchise quarterback with the 138th pick. And not just any quarterback, one who was humble, unshakable, and relentlessly focused on winning. As the season progressed, award buzz followed. Rookie of the Year? All but locked. MVP whispers? Growing. But Shedeur didn't care. He was focused on January, on the playoffs, on rewriting the legacy of a franchise that had long been synonymous with heartbreak. By the end of the regular season, Sanders had